There are places that exist on no map. There are attractions that were never meant for the living, and some carnivals never truly leave once they arrive. Throughout history, there have been accounts of traveling carnivals that appear without warning, then vanish without a trace. Some are nothing more than urban legends. Others, however, have left behind unanswered questions, missing persons cases, and inexplicable horrors. The Dead Man's Carnival is one of them. In the fall of 1981, residents of Odessa, Ukraine, awoke to a fully operational carnival in an empty lot. No one had seen it being built. No workers were present, only the attractions, already running. Everything inside was free. The games couldn't be lost. Everyone won prizes. The Ferris wheel never stopped spinning. The carousel had mirrors instead of horses, reflecting people who weren't there. For the first 2 days, it was a wonder. Then children started disappearing. By the fourth day, 12 children had vanished. Parents who searched for them reported an eerie phenomenon. They could still see their children's reflections in the mirror maze, as if they were trapped inside the glass. The next morning, the carnival was gone. Every ride, every booth, every trace of it had disappeared overnight. The only thing left was a patch of dead grass where it had stood. Authorities called it mass hysteria, but some residents claimed otherwise. The night before the carnival vanished, an elderly woman reportedly saw a tall man in a ringmaster's coat standing by her window. He tipped his hat, then disappeared into the fog. The legend spread. The carnival doesn't take money, it takes people. In 1935, reports surfaced in St. Louis, Missouri of a carnival that only appeared after midnight. Visitors claimed to enter around 11:45 at night, yet when they exited, the sun was rising. People who left said they felt lighter, as if something had been taken from them. A man named Henry Clark visited the carnival with his wife. When he left, his wife was gone, but no one else remembered she had ever existed. By dawn, the carnival was gone. Some believe it was an elaborate con, but one woman swore she saw her own face among the painted figures on the carousel, a face that moved when she wasn't looking. Some say the Dead Man's Carnival is not one place, but many. It appears in small towns, stays for a few nights, then moves on, always leaving behind missing people, strange dreams, and memories that don't quite make sense. But what if it never actually leaves? In a 1927 Illinois case, a young boy vanished after visiting a carnival, but his voice could still be heard in his family's home for years afterward. In 1956, Pennsylvania, a couple visited an abandoned fairground a full year after the carnival had left, yet they swore they could still hear the Calliope music playing from the empty lot. A man in Norfolk, England, 1974, reported seeing a carnival in the distance while driving. When he arrived, it was a field of dead trees, yet he could still hear people laughing. Some believe the carnival isn't just an event, but a thing that exists outside of time. It doesn't move from town to town. It simply appears where it is needed. While most witnesses forget the carnival the moment it disappears, a handful remember just enough to speak of it. A woman from Arkansas, 1989, said she won a mirror at a carnival game. Weeks later, her reflection no longer matched her movements. A man in Bucharest, 2002, claims his brother entered the carnival but never left. His family doesn't remember having a brother. A carnival worker in Oklahoma, 1978, admitted on his deathbed that he once worked for a fairground that had no true owner. "It runs itself," he said. "We're just the puppets." The year is now, and the carnival has appeared again. This time it stands at the edge of a quiet town, in a lot that had been abandoned for decades. No one saw it arrive, no one remembers hearing the trucks. Yet, by dawn, the towering Ferris wheel was spinning, the posters had been placed, and the entrance was open to visitors. The sign at the entrance read, "The Dead Man's Carnival, one night only." Beneath it, in smaller curling letters, "Win the right prize and you may leave. Lose and you will stay forever." And so as the sun set, the first guests stepped inside. The lights flared to life, the music began to play, and the carnival welcomed them home. This is not a legend. This is not an urban myth. This is the last carnival you will ever visit, and once inside, you may never leave. For the protection of the real place and people involved, I have changed the names and specific locations in this story. But know this, what you are about to hear is real. The carnival was real, and some things never truly disappear. I don't remember when I first heard about the Dead Man's Carnival. Maybe it was a rumor passed around school. Maybe I saw an old article about it once. Something about missing people in an abandoned fairground that still plays music when no one is there. Or maybe, like most people, I only remembered it when it came back. It was fall. The air was crisp, the smell of wood smoke drifting through town. Everything felt normal, until the morning the carnival appeared. No one saw it being built. No one saw the workers arrive. One night, the lot was empty. By sunrise, the Ferris wheel was already spinning. The first thing I noticed was the sign at the entrance. It was tall, made of wrought iron, with peeling gold lettering that read, "The Dead Man's Carnival, one night only," and beneath it, in smaller letters, "Win the right prize and you may leave. Lose and you will stay forever." The words sent a chill through me. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was some elaborate marketing stunt. But the longer I stared at it, the more I realized. The paint on the sign was peeling, but the bulbs still glowed. The entrance was wide open, but I saw no workers, no ticket booths. The air smelled of roasted peanuts and candy apples, but beneath it, something metallic, something sickly sweet. Then, the bell tolled, a deep, distant sound echoing from nowhere. And I knew this was no ordinary carnival. I wasn't alone. Others had gathered at the entrance, staring at the flickering lights and the towering rides. Some were excited, some hesitant, but we all felt the same pull. The carnival was waiting for us. The moment I stepped through the gate, the lights flared to life, as if the place had been asleep and just woken up. The music started, an old, scratchy Calliope tune, slightly offbeat, slightly out of tune, as if the song itself was decaying. The first thing I noticed was how old everything looked. The carousel horses weren't plastic. They were hand-carved wood, their eyes too real. The booths had painted faces that seemed to follow you, grinning just a little too wide. The Ferris wheel didn't have modern metal supports. It was built from twisting, gnarled wood, like something pulled from an old fairy tale. But the most unsettling part, there were no workers, no ticket takers, just the ringmaster. He stood at the center of it all, watching. His coat was too long, his top hat shadowing his face. When he lifted his hand, I swore I saw a second set of fingers curling beneath his glove. Then he spoke. "Step right up, dear guests. The show is about to begin." And the carnival sealed itself shut behind us. We tried to stay together at first, but the carnival had other plans. The pathways curved in unnatural ways, guiding us toward different attractions, splitting us apart without us realizing it. I found myself in front of an old game booth, the sign above it reading, "The game that plays you." The booth was lined with mirrors, but they weren't reflecting the carnival. They reflected something else. A different version of the carnival, one where the lights flickered out and the sky was a dull, endless gray. A voice behind the counter whispered, "Care to play?" I turned, but no one was there. A deck of cards had been placed in front of me. Each card had an illustration, but instead of numbers or suits, they showed moments of my life. One was my 7th birthday. Another was the time I got lost in the woods as a child. The last one was a moment that hadn't happened yet. It was me, standing at the entrance of the carnival, but my reflection was missing. "Pick one," the voice whispered. My hand trembled. I chose the birthday card. The moment I did, the mirrors around me changed. No longer reflecting the carnival, they now showed a different version of myself. One where I looked older, tired, hollow. And then the reflection smiled back at me. "You've been here before," it whispered. "Welcome home." I stumbled away from the booth, my heart hammering. I needed to find the others. But as I turned a corner, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A row of prizes lined up on a shelf. They weren't stuffed animals or plastic trinkets, they were photographs. And in them, I saw faces I recognized, people from town, people who had entered before me, and beneath each photo a single word, lost. I turned to run, and the ringmaster was standing behind me. "Leaving so soon?" he asked, his grin stretching far too wide. "You haven't even played the final game." The music grew louder. The lights flickered wildly, and suddenly, everything around me shifted. The carnival had changed. And when I realized the truth, it's already too late. We weren't playing the games. The carnival was playing us. This is only the beginning. The Dead Man's Carnival is more than a legend. It's a trap. And once you enter, you may never leave. The moment I saw the photographs, the faces of people who had entered before me, their names forever marked as lost, I knew I had to get out. My pulse pounded in my ears as I sprinted past the booths, past the flickering neon lights, past the carousel that never stopped spinning. But the exit was gone. Where the entrance had been was now a hall of mirrors, stretching into infinity, each reflection wrong in some way. Some showed a younger version of myself, others showed me with a different expression, staring back as if I were the stranger. The voice of the ringmaster echoed behind me. "What's wrong, dear guest? The fun is just beginning." The carnival had sealed me in. I wasn't alone in my panic. As I turned, I saw others, people who had entered before me, wandering in confusion, eyes glazed over as if they had forgotten who they were. Some were playing the games, their hands moving automatically, as if they had no choice. A man at the balloon dart booth was trembling as he threw. He missed on purpose. The booth worker, whose grin never wavered, leaned forward and said, "You must play to win, my friend, and you must win to leave." The man's face fell into despair. He picked up another dart. This time, he hit the target perfectly. A small porcelain doll was placed into his hands. The moment he touched it, he gasped in pain, his entire body shuddering. His hands clutched his throat as if he couldn't breathe. His skin turned pale, waxy, and before my eyes he stiffened, shrinking until his form was drawn into the doll itself. The doll's eyes moved, blinking once. Another prize added to the collection. Another soul claimed by the carnival. I backed away, my stomach twisting. This was wrong. This wasn't a carnival. It was a trap. I stumbled into the shadows, desperate to think. That's when I saw her. A girl, no older than 10, standing near the edge of the game stalls, watching me. She had long, dark hair, and her clothes were faded as if they had been worn for decades. "Don't play the games," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "What happens if I do?" She glanced at the prizes, the dolls, the mirrors, the trinkets lined up along the booths. "You will become part of the carnival." A chill ran through me. "How do I leave?" I asked. The girl hesitated, then she whispered, "You can't." I wanted to ask more, but before I could, a shadow moved behind her, a towering figure in a coat that shifted like smoke, the ringmaster. His head tilted, his grin stretching impossibly wide. "Are you enjoying the show?" he asked. I blinked. The girl was gone. Had she ever been there at all? I turned to run, but the carnival had changed again. The pathways twisted, no longer leading back to where I had come from. The Ferris wheel loomed larger than before, its cart swinging as if something unseen was inside each one. Then, I heard my own voice, not from my mouth, from the loudspeakers, playing in a distorted, warping tone. "Welcome, dear guests. The show never ends." A new booth had appeared in front of me. The sign above it read, "The Midnight Fortune Wheel. Spin for your future." A massive wooden wheel, painted in faded reds and golds, stood before me. A single lever waited to be pulled. The slots on the wheel weren't numbers. They were words. 1 year taken, 5 years given, truth revealed, memory stolen, soul-bound. A booth worker stood beside it. He was too thin, his skin stretched too tight over his bones. "Spin, dear guest," he crooned. "Every player must take a turn." I didn't want to, but something forced my hand forward. I grabbed the lever, pulled. The wheel began to spin, faster and faster until the colors blurred together. And then it stopped. My breath caught as I read the words beneath the arrow. Memory stolen. The worker's grin widened too far. His eyes darkened. "A fine prize," he whispered. A cold rush swept through me. My vision blurred. Something was being pulled from my mind. Something important. I staggered, gasped. tried to hold on to it, but it was already gone. I turned in horror, staring at the game master. "What did I lose?" I choked out. He only grinned. "Wouldn't you like to know?" I knew then I wasn't just playing a game. The carnival was playing me. My hands were still trembling as I stumbled away from the midnight fortune wheel. I knew something had been taken from me, a memory, a piece of myself, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember what it was. That was the worst part. Not knowing what I had lost, not knowing if it had been important. A deep panic settled in my chest, twisting in my gut. The carnival wasn't just trapping people, it was unraveling them, piece by piece. I turned a corner and stopped. The carnival had shifted again. Where once there had been food stalls and neon-lit game booths, now stood a massive tent, striped in deep reds and golds, its entrance yawning open like a hungry mouth. A sign beside it read, "The show must go on." Inside I could hear applause, laughter, music, but something about it was off. The clapping was too rhythmic, the laughter too hollow. I wasn't sure if I was hearing an audience or something pretending to be one. I took a step closer. Then I saw something written in chalk beneath the sign. 3 words, "We are watching." I didn't want to enter the tent, but as I turned to walk away, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A group of carnival guests, standing perfectly still near a carousel, not riding it, not moving, just standing. Their heads were tilted slightly, and their mouths parted as if frozen mid-sentence, but their eyes were following me, every single one of them. I took a step back. One of them, a woman in a faded blue dress, lifted a hand and beckoned. I turned and ran. I ran until I reached a narrow alley between booths, pressing myself against a cold metal cart. Then a voice behind me whispered, "They can see you." I spun, heart hammering. A man stood in the shadows. His clothes were old, as if they had been fashionable decades ago, but his eyes were clear, alert, terrified. "Who are you?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "I've been here too long." My mouth went dry. "How long?" His eyes darkened. "I don't know anymore." Something in my stomach twisted. "How do we get out?" I asked. He gave me a hollow smile. "We don't." I shook my head. "That's not true. There has to be a way." He grabbed my wrist, his fingers like ice. "Listen to me," he hissed. "The carnival isn't just a place. It's a thing. It feeds. And once it takes something from you," he swallowed, looking over my shoulder, "it never gives it back." I turned, following his gaze. The ringmaster stood at the far end of the alley, watching, his grin too wide and his hands folded neatly in front of him. Waiting. The stranger shoved me backward, whispering frantically, "Don't let them make you play another game. The more you play, the more you lose." I didn't have time to answer, because the ringmaster lifted one gloved hand and snapped his fingers. The carnival shifted again. The alley stretched longer. The booths moved, rearranging themselves in an instant. And when I looked back, the stranger was gone, not vanished, not like someone had run away. He was just missing, like he had never existed at all. I kept moving, deeper into the carnival, my pulse hammering. And that's when I saw the next game booth, its lights flickering. A small wooden sign hung above it, carved in elaborate cursive. The Last Hand. The game was simple. A deck of cards sat on the counter. The booth worker was tall and dressed in an old-fashioned suit. His face was blank, his lips curved in a patient smile. "1 round," he said. "Play, and you might win your freedom." My breath caught. Could this be it? Could this be how I escaped? I reached for the deck. Then, just before I touched it, I noticed something. The booth worker's fingernails were blackened, not with dirt, but as if they had rotted away. And behind him, stacked neatly on the shelves, were dozens of severed hands, each holding a single card, each still moving. I jerked away, bile rising in my throat. The booth worker's smile didn't falter, but he tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "Don't you want to play?" I backed away, shook my head. He's shame. Then the cards shuffled themselves, flipping over to reveal their faces. And I saw something that made my stomach drop. One of the cards had my name on it. I turned to run, and the carnival shifted once more. I stumbled into the center of the carnival, gasping for breath. I had tried. I had fought. But no matter where I ran, no matter what path I took, I always ended up right back where I started. The lights flickered, the calliope played, and from the loudspeakers above, the ringmaster's voice echoed. Ladies and gentlemen, the final act approaches. I looked around, my heart hammering. Every single guest, every lost soul had turned to face me, and one by one, they began to smile. I knew then, I hadn't entered a carnival. I had entered a hunting ground, and soon, I would become part of the show. I ran through the twisting carnival pathways, my breath ragged, my pulse hammering in my ears. I had tried every exit. They were all gone. The carnival had sealed itself shut, shifting the paths like a maze designed just for me. And then, over the loudspeakers, the ringmaster's voice echoed. Our final act is about to begin. The lights flickered. The ground shuddered beneath my feet. And suddenly, I wasn't alone. The lost guests, the ones who had been trapped before me, began to emerge from the shadows. Their faces were hollow, their eyes glazed, their movements jerky, like marionettes controlled by invisible strings. They weren't trying to escape anymore. They were part of the carnival now, and they were coming for me. I turned a corner and slammed straight into a figure in a crimson coat, the ringmaster. He stood impossibly tall. His grin stretched far too wide, his gloved hands clasped in mock amusement. You've done well, dear guest, he crooned, but every show must have its final act. I took a step back. I'm not playing anymore. His smile only widened. Oh, but you never had a choice. He snapped his fingers, and the carnival shifted one final time. The ground beneath me fell away, and I plunged into darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in the carnival. I was in a theater, massive and ancient, the seats filled with silent figures, their faces shrouded in shadow, and on the stage before me stood a single spotlight, waiting. The ringmaster appeared beside me, his voice a velvet whisper. Do you know why you were chosen? I swallowed hard. You said I wasn't the first. He nodded. You are not. You are merely the next. I took a shaky breath. The next what? His grin sharpened. The next performer. I felt my blood run cold. This isn't a carnival, I whispered. It's a stage. His voice was softer now, almost tender. And we must always have new players. I turned back toward the audience. For the first time, I saw their faces, and I recognized them. The lost souls, the ones who had vanished before me. Their mouths opened in silent screams, but no sound came out. They weren't watching the show. They were part of it. The ringmaster extended a hand. One final game. A table appeared between us. Upon it sat a single deck of cards. Pick a card, he said. I hesitated. What happens if I win? His eyes darkened. You leave. And if I lose? You stay. I looked at the deck. My hands trembled. I had no choice. I drew a card. It was blank. I looked up at him in confusion. His grin split even wider. Then your fate is unwritten. The audience began to rise. Their hollow eyes locked onto me. And I realized too late, there was never a way to win. I had already lost. The lights flared, the final act began, and the curtain fell. The darkness around me was suffocating, but I knew I was not alone. I could hear the shifting movements of something unseen, the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes pressing against me from the abyss. Then the darkness flickered, like an old film reel struggling to stay on track, and suddenly I was back in the carnival. But it was different now. The colors had drained from the lights. The banners and rides had aged before my eyes, peeling and rotting as if the carnival had existed for centuries and was only now showing its true face. The ringmaster stood at the center of it all. You thought this was a game, he whispered, his voice sliding into my mind like silk. But the show has never been about winning or losing. It has always been about you. A roar of applause erupted from the empty carnival stands, though I saw no audience, only shadows writhing in their seats. The ground beneath me shifted, and I stumbled forward, toward the center of the carnival, toward the main stage. The final act had begun. I was not alone on the stage. Figures stood around me, cloaked in tattered costumes, their faces covered by masks that were too smooth, too featureless. They moved in perfect unison, as if controlled by a single unseen force. The ringmaster's voice slithered through the air, filling every corner of the carnival. Tonight, dear guests, we unveil our greatest performance yet, the one you have all been waiting for. The masked figures turned toward me in sync, their hollow eyes boring into my soul. Then they spoke, all at once. You are the final act. The words hit me like a blow, the weight of their meaning sinking deep into my bones. I was never meant to escape. I was meant to perform. The shadows in the stands began to move, taking form, stepping forward. They were not just spectators. They were those who had come before me. The lost guests of the carnival, their faces stretched in silent screams. The ones who had played the games and lost, their souls bound to this place forever. The previous performers waiting for me to take my place among them. I saw familiar faces. The man who had warned me, the girl who had whispered not to play the games. They had never left. They had become part of the show. And now it was my turn. The ringmaster gestured toward the stage, his grin widening. Every guest must choose their role, he purred. Will you take the final bow, or will you refuse and remain here forever? I looked at the masked figures around me. I understood now. They were the ones who had refused. They had become part of the carnival itself, the performers, the puppets, the ones who danced forever under the ringmaster's control. If I refused, I would lose myself completely. But if I accepted, I would become the carnival's final act. Was there another way? I took a deep breath. Then, I did something no one had ever done before. I stepped off the stage. The moment I did, the entire carnival shuddered. The masked performers froze, the lights above flickered violently, and for the first time, the ringmaster's smile faltered. That, he whispered, his voice darker now, angrier, was not part of the script. I took another step backward, feeling the air shift around me. I had broken the carnival's rules, and now it was breaking too. The ringmaster lunged at me, his form twisting, his shadow splitting apart into dozens of writhing figures, each one reaching for me with clawed hands. The carnival was unraveling, the attractions collapsing in on themselves, the games turning to dust, the once perfect pathways twisted into jagged ruins, the air filled with the sound of screaming laughter, as if the very fabric of the carnival was fighting to hold itself together. I dodged past collapsing booths, past the carousel that was no longer spinning but screaming, past the Ferris wheel that had become a spiraling void. And then ahead of me, I saw it. The exit gate. It was open. For the first time, it was open. But I wasn't the only one who saw it. The ringmaster was right behind me. I reached the exit, my hand outstretched. But the moment I crossed the threshold, the entire carnival pulsed, and I heard the ringmaster's voice one last time. No one ever truly leaves. A force pulled at me, something cold and desperate, trying to drag me back inside. I could see the outside world ahead of me, my world, my life, my memories, but they were fading fast, slipping through my fingers. I had to make a choice, leave something behind or be taken entirely. I tore myself free, staggering forward, and then everything went black. I woke up on my back, staring at an overcast sky. The grass beneath me was damp with morning dew, the air still and silent. For a moment, I thought it had all been a dream. Then I sat up and saw the empty lot. The carnival was gone. No lights, no Ferris wheel, no music, just dead grass and silence, as if it had never been there. But I knew the truth. I had been inside, I had played its games, and somehow I had escaped, or at least I thought I had. I tried to stand, but a wave of nausea hit me, and I nearly collapsed. Something was wrong. My head felt lighter, as if something was missing inside it. I pressed my hands against my temples, trying to remember my name, my home, my life before the carnival, but all I found was empty space. I had memories, but they weren't mine. Faces that felt familiar but distant. Moments that should have mattered but were hollow, incomplete. The carnival had let me go, but it had taken something from me in return. I stumbled into town hoping, praying, that someone else would remember what had happened, that someone else had seen the carnival. But when I asked, they all gave me blank stares. Carnival? What carnival? You must be mistaken. That lot has been empty for years. Even the people who had gone in with me, the ones who had laughed, who had played the games, they didn't remember. As if the carnival had erased itself from existence, as if it had erased them too. That night I stood in front of the empty lot, staring at the dead grass, trying to convince myself I was free. And then I heard it, the faintest whisper of Calliope music drifting through the night air. I turned, heart hammering, searching the darkness. Nothing. The lot was still empty, but the music was still playing. And in the distance, beneath the cold autumn wind, I heard something else, a voice, a whisper, calling my name. The carnival had let me go, but it was never truly gone, and deep down, I knew the truth. One day, it would call me back, and next time, I might not be able to leave. Thank you for listening to the Dead Man's Carnival. If you enjoyed this horror experience, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, Forlorn Madness. Your support means everything. It keeps us motivated, fuels our passion for storytelling, and allows us to create even longer, even darker horror content for you. This is just the beginning. Here on Forlorn Madness, we dive into urban legends, true horror stories, and immersive nightmares. Do you have a story you'd love to hear? A legend you want us to bring to life? Let us know in the comments. Your engagement helps shape the future of the channel. So until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, the carnival may be gone, but it's never truly over. Subscribe now, and let's keep the madness alive.